Growing an online presence is really difficult. Twitch being one of the more difficult of the social media to grow an online presence, especially starting from zero. And just to be clear, I don't think that there's any like shortcuts to getting big, so to speak, on these social media platforms. It's hard work and you have to make good content. There's just no real way around that. However, I do think that there are ways that you can unknowingly make things much harder on yourself. I can't guarantee that any of these things are going to work for you. I am just here to cover my personal growth on Twitch and kind of talk about why I think the last couple of months have been more successful than my first 2 years on the platform. So this is how I doubled my followers in 1 month. Now, I've been streaming for over 2 years now, daily, at twitch.tv/Thuli. And for the vast majority of that time, I saw pretty much no growth. Now, this is pretty much entirely my own fault because I didn't really know what I was doing. I was inexperienced on Twitch even as a consumer, let alone a streamer. My content just wasn't really that good. I hadn't developed it enough for it to be worth much growth. So I started to look to whatever I could to kind of give me some guidance as far as how I could help improve myself and my stream. Watching different YouTube videos, obsessing over different stats and like stat websites. I was looking through all that shit, and none of it really seemed to make a tangible difference, at least at the time. And like the whole process just feels super nebulous. And there are tons of these websites that kind of compile different stats taken from Twitch streams and kind of put them in a format that allows you to kind of try to get a sense of when the best times are to stream or what the best viewer ratio is for what categories and all of that type of stuff. My main issue with these is that all of these end up favoring different statistics, and they all seem to be like statistics that are pretty manipulatable and pretty influenceable is maybe a better term. Also, I don't want to just play any game. I want to play games that I actually enjoy and that I feel like I could give value to in some way. One of these tools, one of these sort of stat websites is Sullynome. And Sullynome has this tool called the Game Picker. And let me actually pull it up real quick. So what basically this does is it takes all of the live categories on Twitch, right? And it kind of gives you an idea of how these categories rank up as far as the streams that have similar views to you in the amount of followers they're getting per hour, right? So this is followers per hour estimated. Now, it's estimated because, as it says up at the top here, this is not a magic bullet to predict Twitch. It's impossible. That's just not how it works. This doesn't tell you how many followers per hour you will get. It just tells you what other people have already gotten. So it isn't directly just telling you exactly what you're going to get, right? Now, on top of that, there's also things like, which I'm not seeing any standout cases here. These all seem to be relatively believable, but there are instances of people, using follower bots, and those will sometimes get picked up on here. So you'll see a game that has like, 0 viewers or something like that in the last hour. And like somehow there was a channel in it that ended up getting, like 300 followers per hour with an average of like 2 viewers, which doesn't make any sense at all. So it isn't a perfect representation. That and a lot of these categories, if you were to go on here, say, Sally goes on stream and has a great stream and she gets tons of new followers and whatever, right? But then you go on and by that time her stream is over and maybe you don't do the things that she did to account for all of those followers, right? So that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get any followers from streaming these categories, right? So it seems initially like a relatively unreliable way to find good categories for growth, right? So that's pretty much what I thought too, and I knew about this site for a while, but I never really looked too far into it. But then when the quarantine hit, I got a lot of free time on my hands like a lot of other people did. And like a lot of those other people, I put a lot of that free time into content. And as I was already saying, I was kind of already to the point of like I was obsessing over stats and like looking for kind of new direction. And so I thought I would take the time to sort of experiment with what categories I streamed and things like that. And I kind of used this as a little bit of a directive, but I didn't just use it directly. I didn't just come on here and say, okay, I'm going to play whatever game is at the top of the list or something that's in the top 5. Because, like I said, a lot of these, it's not really reliable to say this game is always going to get you followers or whatever. That's just not how this works. Also, you have to make sure that your average viewers is selected because it'll do that if you pull it up for your specific channel. This is just the default 100, which is much higher than my average viewers, but I'm just using this for example so you can kind of see how it works. And different games will pop up depending on what the average viewers are. So, because again, this is for telling you the followers per hour generally of similar channels with similar viewership to what you have entered here. So that's also important. So instead of just picking any game on here, because again, it's not super reliable for that, and also I don't want to just play any game. Some people aren't picky with games. I'm picky with games. I like certain types of games and not others. That's just how I am, and I think that that's how most people are. And so who wants to play just any game just for the soulless reason of only gaining followers? Like, I want to gain followers playing a game that I actually like. So what I did is I happened to notice over that time, because I was spending a lot of extra time on streaming and looking at stat pages and stuff like that, there are certain games on here that are almost always on this list. Again, depending on the average viewers that you enter in. Every time I turn it on, Roblox is on here. Call of Duty Mobile is on here. 1v1.lol is on here. Pinterillo, I don't know what this game is, but it's on here almost all the time. There are certain games that you're going to see like all the time, and then certain games that you're only going to see pop up every once in a while. So the first kind of extra thing that I did to make it a little bit more reliable is I'm not picking out of any of these games. I'm picking out of the games that I always see on the list for my average viewers. The ones that seem to always be there, because what I've found out by streaming these games is there's a reason why these categories are good for growth, and it might not be obvious when you look at this list here, but once you start streaming them, the reasons for why they're good for growth become more obvious. The second extra piece of criteria that I applied to this needlessly was that I was only going to pick games that I genuinely had interest in. I'm not going to just play. I'm not going to play Brawlhalla because I'm a Smash guy and Brawlhalla sucks a fat dick. Okay, so I'm not going to play that game. But for instance, a game like Crunker. I've been playing a lot of Crunker lately. It's actually a really fun game. It might not be for everybody, but I like it a lot because I like FPS games with fast movement, and it just happens to fit in that kind of wheelhouse. And so basically, this is what I started to do. I put those extra criteria points on it. I started checking this, and I started trying different categories, right? And to my surprise, it kind of worked. Here, actually, let me pull up my Twitch stats. But I still have those off days where, nobody follows or they're just a little bit more slow. But I'm getting those off days of low to 0 followers about as often as I was getting followers, period, before. This was actually really the whole 30 days where it started. So going from a little bit under 500 followers over the course of 2 years to then getting 500 followers in a period of 30 days, it was just an amazing difference that I didn't expect to see. And so that's why I kind of wanted to talk about this and just kind of let people in on why I think that difference was made. This is still content dependent. A lot of the categories that I tried streaming, I really didn't see much success with until I started to find a format for a stream and things like that I was adding to make the stream better and better for these categories that I had less experience with. Because in all of these categories, there were still streams that were getting almost no views. Once you find categories that are decent for growth that you also enjoy, I think it's a lot easier to kind of start putting your mind to how you can make something of value to those communities. For me, in my experience, that's when things really started taking off in those categories, is when I started to actually consider what I could offer the communities surrounding those games. So basically, it just it's continuously renewing itself, because as the stream grows, I can adapt to new categories that I wouldn't have had the average viewers for before. And, ideally, you never have to just like, it's not like you stick to those games now. It's like you can continuously like find new games and add them into your rotation and all of this stuff. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, Thuli, by telling us this just giant galaxy brain 5-head giant cock strat, won't it be won't it overflow those categories and ruin the list? And I would say no, because again, the list is variable. The games that are consistent on the list are going to be slightly different based on your average viewers. And also, we're probably going to have different tastes. I am probably not going to see out of the consistent games on the list. I'm probably going to pick ones that are slightly different than you, and vice versa. At worst, the list might evolve a little bit faster because people are playing certain categories more. But again, if it got too overblown in that category to be good for growth, then the list would just adapt to that and put other games higher on the list where those would have been. But yeah, so in theory, it might evolve a little faster, but it should work even if you all started doing this today. So again, growing is hard, but making it harder on yourself without knowing how is how I feel like people really stagnate. So hopefully this helps some of you get out of the 0 to 500 follower valley that I myself was stuck in for a long time, and helps you grow as a creator. Let me know if there are any other seemingly benign statistics that you guys have found creative uses for in the comments. And yeah, I'm sorry it's been so long since my last video, and I know that this video was a little bit different than what we normally do here. But yeah, I'll have more wacky music projects and stream highlights and dumb stuff like that coming in the future. So sub if you want to see those. Until then, you can always catch my streams over twitch.tv/Thuli and catch your boy in real time. Anyway, thanks, guys. See you next time.